Hi, everyone. Now I just see you.
Which you?
Oh, no. Okay. It's working good now. So, hi, everyone. Sorry about that technical difficulty. Amy will be back with us in a second. We're having a very casual day today. Our guest is Nicole Merrill and her son Lawrence, who you may hear in the background, his Zoom debut. And Amy's back. So Nicole is an author, a podcaster, a speaker. We love the opening line of her bio, which is 4-time and counting career changer. Nicole Merrill excels in professional reinvention. Okay. That's basically what she does, is she helps people switch careers and adjust. And she's got a book called Punched Out in the Face, How to Upskill, Change Careers, and Beat the Robot, which you'll hear more about. She's got a podcast called 50 Conversations with Career Changers. And maybe one of the coolest job descriptions that we've ever had on our show, which is she's a conversation designer and analyst at an artificial intelligence startup.
Yeah.
Hearing about that. So please welcome to the show, everyone, Nicole Merrill.
Hey, thank you. Hi.
So great to have you here.
For our very casual conversation, my son will likely make an appearance. Yes. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm making another offering to him. Keep him chill, happy, halfway happy. So yeah.
She showed us the sacrificial altar, and it's pretty impressive. There's like
I have they're just lined up, these offerings, food and toys, in order of what he likes best. So that way, if it really gets bad, I can drop the thing that's like
the big winner. Yeah.
And he knows it too. He knows once this starts, it's a slippery slope, because he's like,
clever.
She's holding out. She's holding out.
I know, right? Pretty soon he's going to be like, no, give me the good stuff. So
don't mess with me, Mom.
Yeah.
Excellent. So whenever we talk to people, we like to ask them first, what are you most passionate about?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. And I always I think I would say I am passionate about people. I'm just super curious about people. I would say people have been really my guiding path throughout whatever I've done, whether it was, I first started studying foreign languages because I wanted to meet people in other countries and really speak a secret language with people. I thought that was really cool. But it's really carried me throughout my career, especially with communications and stuff like that. So I'm just a people person. I'm what I call an extreme extrovert. I love people and I'm just really curious about them. So I would say that's my passion in general.
That's awesome. So what are the multiple careers that you've had so far?
Oh yeah. So I've had over 30 jobs in my life, but I'd say career-wise, I've been a study abroad program advisor. I've been a travel writer / digital marketer. So I was writing for a luxury travel company as a private jet travel writer. Mm-hmm. And then I did a complete 180 and ended up being a global career coach for Yale School of Management. Wow. You'll notice the global same, but apart from that, these are very distinct jobs in different industries and different organizations. And then I transitioned into conversation design for artificially intelligent assistants. So think about Alexa and Siri, or chatbots you might interact with, on Facebook. People design those conversations. And that's what I was doing. I was designing the interactions you have with language and then analyzing some of the data and seeing how users respond, how we should reshape the conversation based on those users. So yeah.
So can we talk then about why Siri has such an attitude with me?
Oh man.
That's something you know?
Yes. In some ways I know why. Someone has to program that attitude, but I'm in the middle of designing some Alexa skills. Literally was doing that right before this call. Wow. And I was like, what am I supposed to say to people when Alexa doesn't understand? Right? It's a lot of work to think of that, because literally you could say anything. I could say, do you want to book a flight? And you could be like, I love this sandwich. Right? It doesn't make sense. Why would you say that? But you know what I mean? So It is a fascinating problem.
So interesting.
So
Amy,
yeah,
Amy, I think you have to tell Nicole your Siri story.
So, I have the American Woman Siri voice on my iPhone.
Oh, how fun.
And I think I came to terms with the fact that it's just the way she pronounces the name Amy, that every time she speaks back to me, no matter what it is, she gives me this, I will do that, Amy, this like attitude. And it really pisses me off. And so I finally turned her off. But so we have this whole, we had this very combative relationship because I felt like she was very pointedly saying my name. And then, Nan, you have to tell the Mad Men story because I don't remember.
So we were going to an event one day. We were filming a red carpet with the cast of Mad Men and had Siri on to give us directions to where we were going. And Amy and Siri were having this slightly combative conversation the whole way, and we get to where we're going.
Because she does that thing where she's like, "You've reached your destination," and you have, but then she has to keep kind of like bitching at you about stuff.
Yeah, your destination is on the right.
I got it. Okay, I got it.
So Amy, we can swear. Amy said, well, "Shut the fuck up, Siri," or something like that.
Yeah, it's like, I know I'm here. Shut the fuck up.
And Siri said to her, "Thank you would have been a nicer response, Amy."
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
And I think I turned her off the next day. I think I was like, I'm done with you.
I don't need that in my life. Okay.
Yeah. She's very helpful, but even we told our, at the time, like 10-year-old nephew about it because he's a little, tech wizard, and he didn't believe me. And then he heard her talk to me, and he was like, "Whoa."
Well, see, that's such an interesting situation. I love hearing that because as someone who's been on the other end, so I was working for a chatbot, not necessarily a Siri, but similar type of job. And we did have a problem with people saying really inappropriate, yours was fine, but like people would say some inappropriate things. And not all inappropriate language is bad. Like it's not all inappropriate, but there were certainly some misogynist comments, some inappropriate sexual innuendo, and thinking about how do you respond to these. And that's actually been in the news in that field about how do you respond to, how should Siri and Alexa respond to sexual harassment? So it's
how do they? What did you
before they didn't say anything. I think it started out where they were very passive about it, and now there's a movement to get them to actually say what is it they're supposed to say? Something along the lines of like, that's inappropriate, here's why. Wow. So, but it depends, like who's thinking of those things, who's designing them. And I could go down a rabbit hole on it, but I've had these conversations inside organizations about how do you anticipate those and then, create a response. Because if you have people that, for example, when I first started, there was no response to someone saying I'm pregnant. Well, that's because all men had designed the system and hadn't thought about a user saying I'm pregnant.
There we go again.
So you can see where this kind of all fits together. So that's why I'm in this field. It's so complicated and yet interesting, right? Like it's just, it's a very cutting edge job and cutting edge technology, but it's really interesting.
Well, and it's so fascinating in relation to what's going on in the world right now too. It's like HBO just took Gone with the Wind off, and they're not going to put it back on until they add a conversation that puts it in context about why it's, offensive.
Right.
So it's interesting, like, I like that that's inappropriate and here's why. That's
right.
Really cool.
Instead of being passive about it, being active about it. And it's the same thing with, racist comments and stuff like that. You have to think about that and provide the right response to make sure that people understand. But it's and that's going to differ by company, right? So I think that's where this gets really interesting and really where it's really important to make sure that you have people from different backgrounds designing these systems. There's a huge push for it.
Are you finding more women and people of color and LGBTQ people?
Not as much as we should. No, not at all. Not as much as we should. It's still very male dominated, white male dominated. And I'm part of a really good community called Women in Voice, and they are working on getting more women into these design systems, but certainly we need more people of color in there, and honestly different age groups, different not just that, but like different life experiences, right? if we've all been in tech our whole lives, then that really doesn't help, right? Designed for people who are living very different lives.
Yeah.
So yeah. We went down a rabbit hole on that one.
We did. I get all fired up when I think about Siri. I have to attack because I want everybody to know it's not just you if you feel you have a combative relationship.
I want to know if you have an Alexa greatest hit. Like, is there something I should ask her so that I know that you wrote it?
Oh no. So the funny thing about Alexa is Alexa has their built-in skills that they design, but anybody can create a skill. So I'm creating custom skills. And I'm doing one for careers. So a skill where you can complain to Alexa about the thing you hate about your job.
Oh, that's interesting.
In a judgment-free zone. So I've got that.
Cool.
And then I created another one. I created a grumpy coworker. Just to see if I could do it. Just a really annoying coworker. If you think about jobs you've had in the past, and you've always got that one person who like overshares about their medical problems. They're grumpy. They complain.
And if you don't know who that is, it's you, right? That's that old quote.
So I just wanted to do it just as like, could I create this?
Yeah.
And my first piece of feedback from someone, I just got the feedback yesterday, was he is so annoying. I don't think I'll ever use this skill again. So I was like, well, I mean, I did it, but I don't know if that's what I want. So,
like, what kind of things does he say?
Oh, he'll say things like he'll gossip about so-and-so opening their door too much and it's bothering him. He'll tell you about two coworkers they think are sleeping together based on he saw they one buy a coffee for the other one. He'll ask you if you'd like a recipe for frog-eyed salad. He'll tell you he's not on Instagram, but he loves LinkedIn. I mean, things that you really just don't care about.
Does he have a name?
Yeah, his name is Larry. Which isn't actually a joke. It's an inside joke. I'll just tell you, because my son's name is Lawrence.
You were really annoyed with your son the day you named it.
No, guess what happened? Yeah, you could draw that conclusion. Me and my partner did not know that the nickname for Lawrence is Larry. So after he was born, everyone's all, Larry, huh? And we're like, no, what? No. So now it's a joke. He's baby Larry. And when I was like, I need a name, Larry just seemed like,
sure, why not?
So yeah, it's just a way to kind of do something different, be creative, and try out my skills. I was laid off, so I've got some time to practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of being laid off, I mean, once the coronavirus flared up, you kind of shifted the theme of your podcast and your mission. So talk about that and where you've ended up.
Yeah, so I was running a podcast for career changers, and very simple premise: interview 50 people about their career changes, right? Because when you interview people, there's, as you know, their stories come out, and I love their stories. And I'm no longer a career coach, but when I used to love hearing that. And I was like, wow, if everybody could hear these, they would see what it's like to actually make these career changes, because so many people don't have a path, right? It's really hard to figure out how to change careers. They don't teach you. And so I wrote the book to teach people that, but also bring that experience to life. And then, so the theme was like, oh, look at these people. They made big changes. Leave your mediocre job. Get out there. Take over the system and free yourself, right? That was kind of the vibe. And then coronavirus hit. And like mass layoffs are happening at an unprecedented scale. And then I got laid off. And so it was like, oh shit, how do I do a podcast about big career changes in the future of work in this new environment? And even as myself, as someone who'd just been laid off, it's like, do I talk about that? Because part of my identity is kind of that working at the cutting edge in tech and stuff like that. And when you get laid off, even including me, you start to question your own identity and professional identity. And there's questions of, well, do I continue doing this, or do I go back to the safe thing?
Right.
That I know I can do, but it doesn't excite me. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I had to sit with that for a while and just also think about tone, because it seems weird to do a podcast about exciting career changes when people are losing their jobs en masse in unprecedented numbers.
Right. Yeah. And yet it's also good that that's the place you're coming from originally, because a lot of people are going to have to make career
Yes.
changes.
Right.
So you have a lot of knowledge already about, forced or not forced, how do people actually
Yep.
take this moment and turn it into a new opportunity?
Right.
I think
right.
is what makes your site and your work really interesting.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the things I was thinking about. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just do an episode on how to make a career change after a layoff. And in fact, right before I got laid off, the podcast that was the newest episode at that time was someone I had interviewed about, she'd been through 3 layoffs. And it was and this is before COVID. So this was like, I interviewed her because I was like, we need to talk about layoffs more. There should be no shame around them. And she has this great story about how she got laid off and how she like made it work for her and made more job security in the future. And it was such a great story. And then I got laid off and I was like, oh man, this is weird. My podcast feels so weird right now. Like, so I did a story about my own layoff and said, this is where we're at, and addressed it because I'm open with listeners. There's no shame, and there should be no shame. This is completely out of your control.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then it was like, well, I could dive into how to do a career change, but it seems like there's all this other stuff in there that we got to talk about before we can actually get to the career change part. And keep in mind, I was doing an interview podcast. I was not doing a solo podcast.
Right.
So I was like, well, what do I do? And so I just started putting out these very solo episodes of like, okay, here's 3 steps you can take right after a layoff. Here's 3 automated tools to get your resume better, because technology has changed for a lot of people and you may not know about new technology to help you write a resume, right? If you can't afford a resume review or career coach. And then ways to network during COVID so it's less awkward, because we're not standing around anymore in weird groups with weird food trying to be like, hey, hi. Right? Like
tiny little forks.
How do I
really
eat?
actually pick up the meat?
Which is kind of better, like we're seeing so many events online now, webinars and conferences and summits and hangouts. Yeah. You can just pop right in and get yourself known. And you could be an introvert from your own house, just like no pants.
Yeah. It is an introvert's dream, I have to say.
It is.
I'm an introvert. It's an introvert's dream. Yeah. I haven't left my house in months, and I'm as happy as can be.
we were reticent to do Facebook Live or Instagram Live for a year. We kept going, like, we really have to do it. And like a week after the shut-in, we were like, all right, next Tuesday we're going live.
Oh, so that's how it happened. Okay.
Yeah. So you just have to, and we're, spoiler alert, we're going to do a summit in a few months that really? I was really terrified of doing in person. And now I'm like gung ho, because we're just going to be like this with who knows how many people watching.
I love about it. I love hearing this. I love hearing this. Shout out to the introverts, man.
Yeah. I mean, we are the exact opposite of how you describe yourself.
Yeah. I know. I teach soft skills. So I teach networking and I teach conversation skills. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, Nicole, whatever, you're the extrovert up there. And I'm like, well, hear me out. Because extroverts kind of fail when it comes to good conversation. They're too much of a talker and not a listener. Right?
Interesting.
Introverts tend to be the better listeners. And if you think about quality conversations, what are the things that resonate? It's the people who listen, And if you can have that dialogue back and forth, that's a quality conversation. Right. But if you get someone who's just like, blah, 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 which I've been guilty of.
Great. Did you say that we've never met Nicole before?
No, I didn't say that.
This is our first time meeting Nicole.
This is our first.
Really one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are good conversationalists too. Like you can tell that you're at ease with your guests.
Right.
Yeah.
We're lucky because we have each other, so that if it were only one of us, we'd be like, so what do you do?
So the success is 2 introverts together.
That's right.
Totally.
Yeah, you balance each other out. You give each other a break. Like, oh, it's her turn to ask a question. Okay.
Or like if my brain just freezes, I know Nancy will jump in and cover me. And this is the greatest trick that when physical networking existed, Nancy and I go to events together, and we have a goal, like we have to talk to at least 2 or 3 people, like, and then we can leave.
Yeah.
But that's a big deal for us. we do that kind of by getting food and standing at a table, or going to a table where there's maybe a person who's by themselves, and then kind of trying to ease into the conversation.
This is outstanding.
Yeah, but the majority of what we do is we stand facing each other and we say things like, I don't have anything to say to you. I want to look like, we need to look like we're talking. And then one of us will laugh, and then we look like we're having a great time, but we're literally talking about how we have nothing to talk about and how much we hate being there and how much we want to go. But it looks like, we don't look like, shy, scared people standing in a corner, clutching a glass of wine.
But you're still on point with your strategy. I'm glad you said that, because that's very similar to what I tell people too, because like, you don't have to go talk to the whole room. Don't worry, the extroverts will do that. Right? But like, just saying like, look, I'm going to commit to these people. And when I'm done, I'm done. Right? Like, and I did my part. And, now
that we do that, we often find that once we've accomplished that goal, we've eased into being there and having a good time, and we stay.
Yeah. I always think it's useful to have I've said this for both extroverts and introverts, but having an exit sentence, right? And being comfortable deploying it, right?
Yes, because that's what freaks me out the most. Yeah.
And just being comfortable with you know what? I got to run, but it was really great to talk to you. Could we connect on LinkedIn? And now you've already you're like, it's ninja. You're like, I'm ending the conversation, redirecting, and then I'm out.
I love that. Our sister Lisa is watching, and she said that she reminded us that our mother always used to tell us to ask people questions. Yeah. Because people love to talk about themselves. And we haven't done it yet, but we've written up kind of an outline for a class or seminar that's about how our skills as interviewers have helped us step out of being introverts.
Yes.
Because it is about, people do love to talk about themselves. And if we can just ask those questions and get them talking, then we can sit back and we don't have to.
This is the secret. This right there, you were absolutely right. This is the secret to networking. It's that ability, enter the conversation, and then you take charge by asking a question. Right? It's not that you have to always add and start, it's drawing that out. It's funny you say that about the interview skills, because for me, what I've learned, and actually I had to learn this as a career coach. I tell this story a lot, but I had to learn how to be an active listener. And that sounds so silly, but honestly, like, I'm an extrovert, right? And extroverts aren't that great at listening. And so being a coach, you have to literally listen to people and not just be like, I've got the advice for you, right? So I learned that. And then in interviewing as well, I have learned to listen. Otherwise you miss an opportunity to follow up. Or those good nuggets to draw out. And so for me, that's what I got out of interviewing, was really, really working on my active listening skills.
I love that. Yeah. The woman Karen Herman, who was our mentor when it comes to interviewing, we started doing a lot of archival interviews. So the whole point of that is to not, like, we listen to podcasts all the time where people are very chatty, and that's one style and it's great. But we've been trained, you ask a question and you don't laugh, so you have to pretend you're laughing, and so that you're not on the, when we pull clips of it, we are not interrupting someone. But Karen also taught us because we're introverts, but we're also, Nancy's nickname, if you don't mind me saying, is Miss Whiteout. We're sentence finishers and we're correctors. So that's a skill that we had. Those are skills skills that we had to overcome. So Karen really taught us to leave the space after someone finishes answering. Because a lot of times, A, you'll think they're done and they're not, but also B, someone will be saying something and they think they're done. And if you let them think about it for another beat, they'll keep telling you a story that they didn't intend to tell, or they didn't realize they wanted to tell, that can be really intense or interesting, or something they've never said before. So leaving that space is such an interesting interview skill that's really hard to learn, because your instinct is like, oh, there's dead air, I gotta jump in.
Yeah, fill the space.
Yeah, that's a very classic American thing too. When I used to do cross-cultural, I have a background in cross-cultural communication, and filling the space is a very American trait. We don't like silence, and so we jump the minute there's silence. And when I teach public speaking, I talk about that too, right? Because everyone's scared during public speaking. What if they don't have anything to say? And it's like, okay, take a minute in that silence. Yes, 500 people are looking at you, but right. Easier said than done, I recognize, but I think you're right. And I'm going to take that back too. Just remind myself I'm moving back in the podcast to interviewing people. And I did an interview the other day and I felt a little rusty on it. Like I was a little, hadn't done it in like, I don't know, 6 months or so, or maybe less than that, but it was rusty. And so that space thing is useful.
Yeah, there's a real rhythm to it. Once we used to do a lot of the archive interviews and we were really like in this great rhythm, and we were, I think, you know, not to toot our own horns, but we were getting really good at it.
Yeah.
And now we don't do as many of them. And when I do them now, I'm like, oh, should I, am I supposed to be talking? Am I supposed to be, you know? So it is like, you have to, it's like any other skill, you know, training. You have to kind of
practice it.
Get right. It's interesting. I've been watching Seth Meyers a lot lately, and you know, they're all doing their shows from home, and his monologue is exhausting because he doesn't have the audience to break up his rhythm. So he like tells a joke and he's like his whole monologue is like this, and he tells the whole thing and he never stops. Like there's no break. There's no moment where you can go like, I got that joke. I'm going to laugh for a second.
Yeah.
Tell me another joke. And so it's really, you know, having that other person to bounce off of, whether it's the audience or the interviewee or something, is really, it's an interesting thing that we had never known before we started doing these interviews. Like it never would have occurred to us, you know?
Yeah, it's a real, these, I was talking to somebody else about podcasts and, you know, how much of a skill set that is. I'm a content creator. I've been creating content for 10 years, pretty prolifically. And podcasting is just a different tool for doing it. But then you learn, you know, I'm learning editing, right? Before I didn't used to edit my podcast, but as a solo person, I have to edit. I learned that very quickly, you know, and then the marketing around it. I have a background in marketing, but marketing my own podcast is a little bit different, you know, and now that I'm working on skills, it's still content, but I'm combining it again with another piece of tech, right? Because podcast is also tech. So it's just interesting to see like how your skills break down and where you're building new ones. I think I said it before. I'm just super interested in skill sets and how we build skills and how much people don't look at their work through the lens of skills.
Right.
So we were really taught to look at it through the lens of experience. Well, I have 10 years experience doing this, or I have 5 years experience writing, right? But within that writing, like there are these skills that are really necessary, and we should think more about them, because the more we think about skills, the better we can then be like, oh, maybe I can do this thing here.
Right. Apply to something else. And frankly, like I never want to have a job or a career where I'm not learning a new skill. Like my very first boss, I worked on the TV show Matlock, and one of the first things he taught me was, if I learned something new every day, then it was a good day. No matter how small it is. And I have always carried that with me. It's like, if I ever get to a point where I'm like not learning something new, I got to move on to something else.
I honestly, I think that's the best way to go about your career. I think, you know, there are a lot of people that are stuck, and we hear that a lot. And part of that stuck, sometimes it's stuck, it's financial, it's boredom, but a lot of that is that lack of learning, a lack of opportunity to challenge yourself. And you know, when I wrote my book, I thought about my colleagues and my peers around me. I am 40 years old. I've changed careers a lot, but my peers have not. A lot of them have been out of college over 10 years. Right. And it just, what you were seeing is people being burnt out and just bored, but not knowing how to change. And part of that is because no one teaches you. But the other part is that like, we're not emphasizing skills, right? You're in an organization that's not teaching you. And quite honestly, companies haven't done a good job of investing in their coworker or in their workers. Right. And we've seen a decline in training and professional development, and much more of short-term employment, right? So not a lot of employee loyalty. We talk about employer loyalty, we should be loyal. Yeah. But companies aren't loyal to us.
Right. And so employees are worried about their positions. Right. So they don't necessarily want to show other people their skills, because they don't want someone to learn what they're doing and be able to do it.
Yeah, they want to look valuable.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's all that tied together. And one of the things that I advocate for inside of organizations is creating these learning ecosystems. So people actually have the opportunity, not just to take a class online, valuable, definitely valuable, but to actually apply those skills. Going back to kind of what you were saying about, you have to apply the skills, right? You have to practice them. You can't learn to write from a webinar.
Right.
You may learn how to Excel, but you can't learn it until you're actually using it in the everyday context. That's why I may be laid off right now and know how to do conversation design, but I'm still experimenting with it in order to make myself, A, keep the skills active, and B, make myself attractive to future employers.
Right. Yeah.
I have a lot of feelings on skills.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, it's really important. Right.
So you said you're shifting back to interviews on the podcast. So are you going back to what you were doing before, or has it morphed into something
Still changing? Else? Yeah, it has morphed. A couple of different things. One, I've gone through kind of this layoff series, and because I freed myself from kind of the original point of it, like it feels like I have a little more freedom now. And that feels weird because I was really stuck on this idea, 50 conversations and that's it. But what I'm learning from both feedback from listeners and the data that I'm getting, and just kind of where we are with the job market, is that I need to do a little bit, I need to diversify some of the content a little bit. And so what I'm actually going to be doing is focusing on that upskilling piece and really introducing another offering, really introducing.
Where are we on the scale of good to best?
I offered him his second favorite toy. That worked for a long time. I just re-offered some food and he just threw it.
Oh,
back to the food.
No.
So that's okay. That wasn't the first favorite food. That's not his main meal. So
Okay.
we'll see. We're not through all of them yet.
All right.
And I've yet to pick him up because at some point I'll have to pick him up and he'll be like,
Guest appearance.
yeah, exactly. So far we're doing good though. I will say
I'm blown away.
Further than I thought.
Yeah.
But back to the content, it's focused on upskilling. What is it, right? And then how do you do it? How do you go from someone who's like, yeah, you're right, I do need to learn some new skills. It's been a while. What should I do? And that's something I walk through in the book, but I want to bring that to life. And I want to do it through interviews with people that either have done it or work for a company that helps you do it. Or, I mean, I've been meeting all the people in this space and having some good independent conversations. And I want to bring them on to give them perspective. Yeah. And I think that's gonna kind of change the dynamic on the podcast in a way. We're still related to career changes, but really diving into the how. But then I get to go back to my favorite, which is interviewing, which I think for listeners I want to hope for listeners. I enjoy interview podcasts. So
yeah, me too.
I hope it's enjoyable for the listeners. We'll see.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Why did you pick 50 for the original podcast? Why was that your magic number?
Because in the book, I have an exercise called 50 Conversations. And when you think about career changes, there's really 3 stages. There's the exploratory, the skill building stage where it's like, I've decided what I want to do, but I need to learn these skills to do it. And then there's the actual job search, making that transition, right? The practical part. So in the exploratory side, there's a lot, depending on where you're at, that you can do to figure out what you want. A lot of people get stuck on, well, I don't know what I want to do. Well, that's normal. I hear that all the time. So let's commit to figuring that out. And that can take some time. But the exploratory process can be actually a lot of fun. All right. And really interesting. And what I have in the book are a variety of exercises you can try. But one of them is 50 conversations. And it's literally where I assign you the homework of having 50 conversations with people about their jobs. Oh, and cool. Yeah, very extroverted approach. But this is not uncommon. In job searches, we talk about informational interviews. This is informational interviewing light. This is simply, did you meet someone today that you didn't know? And you ask, well, what do you do? And they said, I'm a conversation designer. And you just went, okay. That's a missed opportunity to say, oh, I've never heard about that. Tell me more, right? Real powerful statement. And then follow it up with, how did you get into that? And that's where the magic starts to happen, because people often aren't asked that. They love to talk about themselves, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you're going to get these insights that you're not going to get from a personality quiz, that you're not going to get from just reading job descriptions, which I also assign you to do, reading job descriptions, so you know what's out there.
Yeah.
But so that's really the goal. And 50 is a lot, but that's the point. You're not going to figure it out in 3. You're going to get better at it at 10. You're going to be on a roll by the time you get to 25. And by 50, you're going to be like, hey, I've got a network. I've built my conversational skills, and I'm going to see some themes emerge. If you learn that someone does budget for the city and you're like, I would never want to do city budgeting, you have now learned that's not a path for you. Right? And that's valuable.
Yep.
So that's how the podcast was named. And so I'm deviating from it, but it's my podcast.
Yeah, it's your prerogative.
As long as I take listeners on a journey with me, I think they'll be happy with it.
I just think it's great that you switched the focus of it so quickly. And I mean, the information, like just even the titles of episodes that you've had during this time about like, you know, use people skills to build an adventurous career in tech, and don't get too comfortable, how to make a change. And you've really, like, a lot of them are, like you said, were about layoffs and 5 low-key ways to make networking less awkward. It's all just so helpful, and there's so many people that need that information right now, and the world is so overwhelming.
Yes.
You know, we're very fortunate at the moment. We're among the fortunate that, you know, our biggest client, we knock wood, we've still been going with them every month. We're like, but you know, I can't imagine the stress of getting laid off in the midst of all of this. And I know so many people have. So to have a resource that people can go to, and as one of our people in our chat said, you're very engaging, and you can tell that you're passionate about it, but you're also really excited to help people. And that energy, you know, listening to your podcast, that energy really comes through. I like your solo podcast too, because
thanks.
You know, you're giving so much free information, and you know, everybody needs it right now. So what you're doing is really important.
I appreciate that. Certainly as a creator who's like, I don't know, I don't have an editor, right? I wrote a book, I had editors, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Right? But as a podcast, I don't have an editor, I don't have a co-host. So it's always like, hope this goes out well, you know, I get emails from people, and that's great. I love when that happens. And generally it's all been positive. So that's wonderful. But it is hard sometimes as a creator to be like, you know, I can read my data and see like, all right, that episode was on fire, right? Maybe not so much that one. And so that helps. But it is an interesting experience to kind of switch it up and try something new, right? You know, you're right. I do want to help people. This is hard for me, but I know I'm an expert, and it's hard for me. And we don't teach people what to do after a layoff. We just don't. It's like this taboo thing, as if it was somehow people's fault, and it's not our fault that we got laid off. Right?
Can you give people 3 tips for dealing with their layoff?
Yeah, after they've been laid off, one, I would say, first off, don't react immediately, you know, take it in, right? Treat yourself. If you're an external processor, go find the person that makes you feel good and that you can talk to. I know not everyone's external processing, but certainly make that the case, and take some time for yourself as much as you can. Some people, you may have to get to work right away. Okay. But like, if you don't, sit with it, because it does suck. Like I say, don't feel ashamed, push the shame away, but do feel that feeling, because it is stressful. And then start naming the things that you're stressed about. You can do this even if you haven't been laid off, but like, what is it your biggest concern? I think is really get that sorted. I know there is unfortunately a lot of people who have been laid off who lost their health benefits. I am fortunate and privileged that my partner, I'm married, and I am on their benefits. So it makes it easier and less stressful. If you are not, get to work on that and solve that immediately. Figure out, there are so many resources out there right now. So your state, there are people that will walk you through the process of finding benefits, and get that information rather than thinking, oh my God, how do I do this? Like, get it. So I would say just take care of those immediate needs. After that, start to do the work and figure out, what does your path look like? Are you going to, do you need a job right now to pay bills? No problem. Go get that job. You can figure out the rest later. But if you need immediate work to get those bills paid, go get that job as soon as possible. And that could be everything from doing, you know, the Instacart to doing gig work, to cashier. These are not glamorous jobs, but they pay and they're in demand right now. Right. And there's no shame in that, right? Like I have taken all kinds of jobs because I needed to pay bills. Right. So, do that. For those that work in offices, temporary staffing, I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Someone else is looking for you. I give a shout out to that.
Yeah.
If you are in a position where you have time, I would say then start the process of thinking, okay, what does it look like going forward? Are you going to get the same job, or is this the chance where you're like, you know what, it's time to get another job? If that's the case, start researching the industries that are hiring.
Right.
Because if you worked in hospitality, chances are there's going to be fewer jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really a very reflective period and a very research heavy period. I think there's a tendency to just be like, okay, job search, apply, right?
Right.
That sometimes works, but if you take the time, if you have the time to reflect and then do that research, you're going to be a lot better off long-term in your job search instead of just kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So a lot packed in there, but I do break
That's
this all
great.
down in those episodes. I go through a lot of this stuff across them to kind of help people. And the next episode that's coming out, it'll be the last one in the layoff series, is how to make a career change after a layoff.
Oh, good.
So,
excellent.
Yeah.
And what's your number one tip for that?
Oh gosh, my number one tip is
if you can boil it down. Like, I know you can't boil the whole thing down, but is there something that, like, because it's scary, it's scary. Even in the best of circumstances, it's scary to make a career change, but like, how do you get people to feel more comfortable?
Number one tip is always hard, but here's what I'll tell you. Embrace the ambiguity. I think what I see constantly, even from my friends, is what'll happen is they'll be like, I need to make a change. And immediately the people around you be like, well, what do you want to do? What's it going to be? What is it? And you're like, oh, shit, I don't know. I know I got to change. I'm burnt out. Right. And so there's that external pressure. And then there's your internal pressure where you're sitting there going, I don't know. And then you feel like a failure because you can't figure it out. But the fact is you haven't even started. Right. This is a process, the exploratory process. For some people, it could be a month. For other people, you may have decided 2 years ago you wanted to be something and you just never did it. Right. For others, it might take 6 months. I mean, you've got to get clarity on that. And I think what we need to talk more about is that being comfortable in the gray space and being able to say, I don't know what I'm going to be, but I'm working on figuring it out. Right. And there's how you claim that space, right? You're telling people like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to figure it out. Right. You may be crazy in your head being like, I have no idea how I'm going to figure it out, but it gives you space. Yeah. And I think when we start from a period of claiming that space, you've then given yourself permission to figure it out, right? Because most people, it's not going to be clear right away, especially if you've just been laid off.
Right. Yeah. If you think that this is your path and all of a sudden, pandemic changes your situation so drastically.
Yeah.
We interviewed a career coach. Her name is Lindsay Gordon. She's great. And she had the kind of, this was pre-pandemic, but I think it's the other end of the spectrum that I found really interesting was she coaches a lot of people who think they want to have a career change. And part of what she does is it kind of sit down with them and say, like, what do you and don't you like? And a lot of people come to the realization that they actually do want to keep doing what they're doing, even if it's not their passion, even if it's not their dream job, because it satisfies certain needs, it pays the bill, or it allows them to have the time with their family that they want, whatever it is. And so she likes to get people comfortable too with the idea of, like, if you don't have to make a major life change right now, you can say, like, you know what, I was doing waitressing and I love waitressing and I'm going to keep looking for jobs in waitressing, and or I want to be an accountant, and okay, so stick on that path. And I think I feel like there's a lot of pressure right now for people too to be like, well, you got laid off and now is your time.
Right.
Yeah. Make that
big move.
And you don't have to do that right now. You can get settled and you can make your move later if you want. But like, if you're, the thing that makes you feel good right now is just trying to get that consistency back, then go for it.
I couldn't agree more on this topic, because I talk about the just good enough jobs and the boring jobs, right? Here's what a boring job allows you to do. Have no stress, right? A boring job with no stress. You can go home, have a side hobby, you know, you could indulge in other things without carrying that home with you. Like there are benefits. You could maybe, I know there's like a lot of pressure for everyone to start their own business. And honestly, it's not for everybody. Right. That hustle is rough. As someone who's just been doing it for 3 years, like I've been contracting, have my own business, it's a lot. And I've had to make a decision. Do I go back to full-time work or do I keep pushing through? And it's a real hard decision to make. And when you're calling your own shots. And it's funny, I keep thinking about all the people that are pushing people to go start your own thing. And I think being able to have kind of a job where you don't have to think too much and then go home and then run your own side business is so beneficial. So that way you get kind of like, you get the ground running and figure out if you like it, right? Yeah. That's where having kind of those jobs really helps. And then honestly, like I'm an advocate for focusing on curiosity over passion. Like I know we're talking about passion on the show, but like, like curiosity can be such a powerful driver in your career. I advocate in this book. We've been taught to find our passion, but what happens is you may not find your passion right away. Or like me, I love laying in hammocks and playing pinball. Those are my passions.
Can you get paid for that?
Cannot get paid for it. I have tried. I haven't tried, but I would try if I could. Right. And so it's like, even as a language major, I loved language. And I was like, well, how do I make this into something? And I've slowly sort of kind of done it throughout my career. But, you know, people get real caught up on having to find that one passion. But the fact is, not all jobs align with passion, and that's okay. So figure out what you can find passion in your job, right? Figure out what brings you passion outside your job. And then if you want a driver, look at curiosity. What are you just interested in, right? Like, can you do a job for 2 to 5 years and it'll keep your curiosity? That's where I'm at. I mean, I thought my dream job was going to be study abroad advisor. I was like, this is my dream job. And I was in there and I loved my coworkers and my boss. I had such a good setup. But that job, I got real bored. Not gonna lie. I got real bored. And I was like, well, what now? Everything was supposed to be this job. Yeah. And that's true. Dream jobs, they go away, and our passions change as we get older.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? That's definitely
totally relate to that.
Yeah.
We keep getting asked, what's the name of the book?
It's called Punched Out in the Face: How to Upskill, Change Careers, and Beat the Robots. So you can it's available on my website. You can just go to punchdout.com to find it. It's on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble.
I'm dropping that link right now.
Excellent.
As the kids say.
As the kids say, that's a good lingo. Maybe dropping that link. I like it.
I heard somebody say that on a webinar the other day. I'm dropping that link. Like, cool. I'll pick it up.
I've been using slide into my DMs.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
that's a good
nice.
one too. So are the robots going to take our jobs?
Oh, I get that question a lot. Not surprisingly. You know, it's complicated. So the challenge around that question is that it's kind of this binary that does nobody any favors, right? It's like, maybe in 100 years, but like, let's talk about the next 5 years. Yeah. Robots will not take your jobs, most likely. But what's going to happen is that, and I should say also, and I talk about this in the book a lot, but it's not necessarily robots, it's software. Mm-hmm. It's software that you can't see. Another offering.
Oh, what is this one? Are we at the cherries yet?
This is a sandwich.
Oh, that looks good. I didn't know 1-year-olds ate sandwiches.
No, this one does.
Wow.
I didn't know that either till I had a baby.
I had no idea. I thought they were on, applesauce
he's got
10 years.
So good. I too thought some really funny things before I had a kid. So going back to it, yes, it's going to be software that takes your job, and it may not take your job. It may just change your job, right? Mm-hmm. So automation software, right? Instead of sending an email every week, a platform sends an email that you've scheduled, right? But that used to be somebody's job. And so that's kind of one of those things that, like, if you think about that applied to literally every single function in the organization, what we're going to see is that the nature of jobs change. We may see fewer of those jobs. We may see, if you don't have the technical skills to work with these platforms or understand how they work, you may not be as in demand in the workplace. And you may, I've certainly met the people that's like, ooh, technology, I don't want to even think about it. Well, that's not going to do you any favors because it's already here. And so you can reject the technology, but also be curious about it. Right. And I think that's important to know, because the tech is already here. So learn about it. Right. Robots aren't going to take your jobs, but they're certainly going to change them. And if it hasn't happened yet, it'll happen in the next couple of years. Yeah. To give you a really concrete example, the chatbot I worked on was an interview chatbot. It interviewed people for jobs.
Oh, wow.
Which is mind-blowing when I first found out it existed, right? Yeah. Which is why I got into it. And as a career coach and having been a recruiter in the past, like I was like, what is this thing? And that changes the dynamic with recruiters then. It frees them up to have far more interviews and people, but it's going to change the workflow. It's going to change what they do in their job. And it may, we don't know, because companies aren't going to publicize this, reduce the amount of jobs available for recruiters.
Right. So interesting.
Yeah, it's so that's what I want people to focus on, is what is the software inside your organization. It's often called automation software. What is the software that's doing jobs that humans have done in the past? So these are easily repeatable tasks. They are often powered by data and so on. So if you know your engineering team, or if you know anyone in IT, go talk to them and ask them about automation software.
Interesting. Wow.
All right. I feel like Lawrence has been like so patient.
I know he has.
Lawrence has been patient.
I feel like we could.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi there.
You're adorable. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
There's the guy that's been just puttering around.
You've been such a good boy. Thank you.
Love you already, Lawrence.
I know.
He's got quite the personality.
Oh, he's so cute.
One other comment I just wanted to read is that our sister Lisa says, I want to be Nicole's friend.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
And we agree. We want to be your friend too. So you're not getting rid of us.
Stay in touch. Yeah. I mean, it's so much fun to talk, just like casual conversations and see where they go. You guys are great hosts. So
thank you. It was fun.
That was really fun.
Yeah. We'll definitely be in touch. We have some things we want to talk to you about. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to chat. And now I'm gonna go give all my attention to this kid.
Excellent.
Please do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
You. Okay.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you soon.